Hey, everybody. We are here today with Cash and Prizes director Michael Combs and producer Lara Thompson. And we're going to chat a little bit today about their upcoming documentary. And we're also going to formally announce today, well, I am right now, that as of today, I am formally a part of the writing team and the creative team for Cash and Prizes, and my pen name will be credited on the documentary. So hopefully that'll be a good thing. But with that said, we haven't really had a chance to talk with Thompson publicly. For anybody who's been following my channel, you'll know that Michael Combs has interviewed with me a couple different times. So we're going to kind of talk about the upcoming documentary, as well as a little bit about Warren Farrell and the boy crisis. And then, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about Thompson's experience and kind of what brought her to become the producer for Cash and Prizes. So with that said, thank you guys for being here. Why don't you both kind of introduce yourselves again for anybody who doesn't know who you are, Michael, and then talk about a little bit about your background and kind of what got you both into it. So go for it.
Okay. My name is Michael Combs. I'm the director of Cash and Prizes. This is Lara Thompson. She's my producer. We're on a team of a number of people. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars flying around the country, interviewing a lot of experts and authorities, philosophers, you name it, all on this construct of why marriage is ending and why is there a divorce culture in this country, and then what are the downstream consequences of that. I began the journey because I'm the fourth generation of divorce culture, and I don't want to pass it on to my children. And I'm fine being my own person and being self-employed and being in that. But I'm not fine for my children to do that. So this is an experimental journey or an experiential journey on how do I not pass that legacy on of divorce to my children. Go ahead, Thompson.
Okay, so I'm Lara Thompson. I'm a mother and a mediator. I'm co-producing this documentary. I'm really excited about the project because I intimately understand the divorce rate culture here. As my property was taken, my sons were taken at one point, and I just don't want that happening to other families. So I'm also a child advocate. I'm a life coach. I'm interested in the family and making sure that children can thrive within our society. And right now we've got a lot of social crimes against children. That's why I'm involved.
Awesome. You know, and I think that it's important that somebody like you with your background is involved because, you know, I've helped a lot of people in my 10 plus years as I'm trying to talk here, of a family law paralegal with a focus in litigation. And I would say probably 25% of everybody that I've helped who's been hammered by the family court has been a woman. And it's interesting because every woman who I've helped who's been raked over the coals in the family court, they all have like the same template. You know, they're not a feminist, or they're an anti-feminist, or they're strong, they're competent, they're capable, they're resourceful, and they believe that action should have consequences. And most of the time, they don't fit the mold of a wife going through the divorce system. And so it's interesting that you're seeing a lot of that as well. I know we kind of talked a little bit offline about that before this started, but I think that a lot of people need to understand that this isn't something that just affects men. Women are being negatively impacted by this whole culture as well. And this is something that I got into in chapter 8 in my book, The Feminist Lie, where I said, look, there are consequences for women also. Now, I only discussed it in relation to promiscuity culture, but I think that, you know, you as a family law mediator, I mean, obviously you bring that family law experience to the table, and you can demonstrate not only from your personal experience, but from some of the people that you've worked with, that this negatively impacts women as well. And it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Obviously, it's always going to negatively impact the children. Even amicable divorces have some kind of negative impact on the children of that family, because the family is basically being destroyed in the process. So,
absolutely. There's got to be a trickle-down effect, problematic issues for kids when two people, even if they get along, there's going to be problems for the kids, regressions, issues that could come up later, emotional harms. We need to be focusing on why we need to get along for kids. Forget about, parents whose brains are already fully grown. These kids are suffering. obviously, all we have to do is look at the suicide rate.
Right. Well, and not only just the suicide rate, but we look at the unemployment rate, we look at the dropout rate, not just in high school, but we look at the dropout rate in college. We look at the fact that colleges today have massive amounts of college students that are suffering from psychological issues that are related to broken homes and the culture that we live in. And then on top of all of that, we have to really focus on the next generation, educating them and protecting them and giving them the tools that they need so that they can break this multi-generational cycle. And I know this is something that we talked about previously, but I think it's important to underscore that, your focus on the children and that push, I think is especially important when you take it in combination with what Yuri Bezimov said back in 1984, when he said, look, social justice goal is to indoctrinate children, because once you've indoctrinated them, it's very difficult to deprogram these kids to get them to see normalcy. And they get so programmed into this social justice environment that what happens is when you present them with objective facts and verifiable facts, they can't perceive them. They suffer from this level of cognitive dissonance that the facts never penetrate them because they're so tribal in their mentality and they're so indoctrinated into this group that they can't break out of it. So being able to focus on the next generation, Generation Z, I think is what they're calling them now, I think that that's extremely important. But with that said, let's go ahead and use that as a good transition to talk about the next generation. Let's talk about the boy crisis and Warren Farrell. I know, Michael, you wanted to kind of touch on some of this stuff, so go ahead and take it away from there.
Yeah, my team and I, we've been flying around the country interviewing all these people. We decided to go interview Warren Farrell, and we flew out to San Francisco, to Mill Valley, Muir Woods, etc., or Mill Valley, California, and we interviewed Warren for about a week, and I have about a 2.5 hour interview in which I've edited together about 2 hours, so about 2.5 hours. And we broke it apart into about 23 different sections.
Now, before you continue on, let me kind of step in here. For people who don't know, tell me about who Warren Farrell is, kind of his history, and then, where he is today.
So Warren originally he got his PhD at NYU, and he was on the National Organization of Women. So he was a big feminist in the 70s with Gloria Steinem, the whole bit. And he really wanted to explore the issues of what are the hard parts of a woman's journey and what are the hard parts of a man's journey. And as you start to move into the man's journey, the feminist organization at the time in the 70s basically said, no. We're only interested in these issues. We're not interested in those issues. So basically, what ended up happening to Warren is he ended up going in the 80s and 90s doing a bunch of counseling, writing his books on why men make more, the myth of male power, all those things like that. And he started going on this journey exploring who is really the weaker sex. He has this beautiful analogy talking about buck elks, where if you don't know about buck elks, they basically they go around the forest or whatever it is, and they have to eat all these nutrients to grow these big antlers. Well, because they're growing those antlers, they're actually much weaker because they're spending all their time trying to impress a woman or a female of their species. And actually, because they're so strong, in appearance is so strong, the reality is they are the most vulnerable. So just as men work 60, 80 hours a week, and most women, I think only 4% of women want to work over 40 hours a week, generally. And the illusion for buck elks, for Warren, to men, is that the elks work so hard to become attractive or to become valuable for females and their counterparts. And so what ends up happening is that they're actually, if they don't eat enough, mate fast enough, and dump their antlers fast enough, they're going to die. In that same construct, for men who work 80 and 60 hours a week to find a woman, to marry a woman, to be attracted to one, etc., they are actually the most vulnerable to be susceptible to the bribes of male disposability. And so that's how Warren talks about that piece. There's another really beautiful piece on school shooters and where they're from. He breaks it all down. He breaks down issues of where would you want to be if you're a single parent? What are the 4 must-dos if you're going to go through a divorce? Because the big secret is that almost everybody goes through divorce or has a child out of wedlock. You are really the abnormality to even be married and stay married is almost nearly impossible.
Right. And I remember I saw a stat that last year in 2018, 37% of children turning 21 in 2018 were born to out of wedlock mothers. And I remember previously, while I was researching my book, I think they said that like 1 in 4 American adults have experienced either a major breakup or a divorce in their own lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these statistics that talk about that. You can go, well, 80% of people in the African American community are born out of wedlock. I think we're really close on bumping the 60% of all children are born out of wedlock. I mean, marriage is over. It's done. But anyway, but back to Warren.
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting you bring up the thing about Warren and the buck elk analogy, because it sounds like, at least when it comes to humans, it sounds like what you're telling me is that we should be renting instead of buying.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, especially in our current culture of divorce.
Right.
The thing about Warren is I'm sitting there talking with him. I mean, these are very highly stressed because you're carrying $100,000 of gear across the country, renting multiple cars.
Well, and you went to San Francisco, right?
Really big. It's really challenging to move across the country with all this gear.
Right. Well, and you went to San Francisco, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So like you had to avoid the homeless.
We this monster Airbnb, like a 5,000, 6,000 square foot home, the whole bit,
right?
To shoot it because we couldn't find a hotel, enough space for the cameras and things. But anyway, it's by the point. And I'm sitting there going, Warren, are you the inventor of male disposability? He goes, oh, yes, I am. And he's very kind. And Warren's always very kind. And for those that don't know, Warren is the progenitor. He is the father of real gender studies, of this construct of what's the difference from men and women. He talks about stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is this construct of, men and women since the beginning of time. Men were the hunters and gatherers, the ones who went off to war that died, and women were the ones who took care of the children, cooked food from scratch, cleaned everything. Well, now we're in stage 2, where we no longer have those constructs. So where are we going evolutionarily? And that's Warren's big push. But the part that I'm really happy with is I really pushed Warren to really, really dive deep into male disposability, because there isn't a lot out there where Warren talks candidly and openly about male disposability and what that means. So if you're watching this, if you do one thing, I want you to go on my channel and watch the one on male disposability. And really deep dive into it and feel it. The other really beautiful one, we talked about Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
And this construct.
Disturbing, not beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And he talked about how we live in a culture of men bad and women good. We live in a culture where we put a magnifying glass on women's issues and completely ignore men's issues altogether. Right? Because we look at buck elks going, oh, they're big and strong. They have those antlers. They need no help. What we don't see is what they have to do to get there and how they dispose themselves and how they're in this culture of disposability and how we're not equal. And that's the construct. But anyway, for Weinstein, we talked about what a disgusting person he was, but the hypocrisy in our culture where we don't see both sides of the coin. We only see the pain of the women and we don't see the pain of the men in our culture at all. And I asked the question, why is it that Weinstein's punished for obviously using women to get what he wants and advancing their careers, but why don't we ever hold accountable women that sleep their ways the companies, that sleep their way at the top of companies and things like that? Because they're obviously doing this as a quid pro quo. And he said, well, the issue is that the equivalent of a female Harvey Weinstein is women that target men for the protection of their wealth to get pregnant and to have these children and use child support and divorce courts specifically in order to exploit them. And I thought that was very telling. It's a very amazing interview. Anyway, I have lots of those. I think I have 23 of them.
Right. Well, while we're taking a trip to Tangentville, first and foremost, for anybody watching this, we're going to put a link to Michael's channel in the description so you can watch that Warren Farrell interview. Warren Farrell is probably, in my view, he's one of the fathers of the men's movement, or at least the modern men's movement. And many of the terms that he has coined and much of the research he's done is the foundation of the manosphere that we have today. All of that was built by Warren and the people around him because, again, he spent a lot of time researching and thinking and considering and contemplating and testing his theories before he put them down, in the books he's done and talked about them in the interviews. But it's interesting, even though that's important, that the tangent that I wanted to go on, I think, is that a lot of people don't talk about is, we talk about the needs of women all the time. And obviously, one of the things I always harp on for anybody who's seen my channel is the fact that there is a womenshealth.gov in the United States, but there is no menshealth.gov. And a lot of people in the manosphere talk about things that men need or things to improve men's lives. But the thing that isn't really talked about is the fact that men have emotional needs too. I mean, we're just as emotional, just in a different way as women are. And a lot of times our emotional needs aren't met when we go through these family court situations. So we're kind of left adrift. And, this is why we reach the valley of suicide. This is why we have these grief cycles and this red pill rage and red pill grief and all these different things that that men go through. That's why they say, when we destroy men in family court and we destroy men through, really bad breakups, this is why these men are at increased risk for suicide, and why many men go through a lot of mental health issues, and we don't care. I mean, as a society, we just don't care about, how to help these men through the process, because it's not like a situation where, you're born with a predisposition to schizophrenia, or a genetic mental health disorder or a chemical imbalance per se. This is an environmentally inspired issue. It's like the same thing, like when you take a soldier, right, and you send them overseas to war, they come back from that conflict and they have PTSD. It's not that they got it from a chemical imbalance or anything like that. They got it because they experienced some horrible shit. And they're trying to cope with it, and their humanity is trying to cope with it. And so they end up getting PTSD, and then eventually they're able, some of them are able to recover from it with good, strong support and, some tools to be provided to them to help them. But we toss too many men by the wayside because of male disposability. And the reason that we are talking about male disposability, the reason that these conversations even exist in the manosphere, is because Warren Farrell coined the term, because of the work that he did, which is the foundation of most of what I do and what many other people on the internet talk about. So, when it comes to that, many people, even whether they know it or not, they owe people like Warren Farrell a debt of gratitude, even though he did start out, as a male feminist in the National Organization for Women. And, it's funny because, and I say funny, strange, not funny, haha, is that, once Warren started talking about, what are men going through, all of a sudden, he's persona non grata.
It all shut down.
Right. Well, Erin Pizzey went through the same thing. Right. And Erin Pizzey went through much the same thing when she was a feminist in the UK. She was married. She was happily married. She started the first women's refuge, which is their version of a domestic violence shelter. And she started saying, look, we're concerned about this because these women in this domestic violence shelter, they're admitting they're doing false allegations. They've got drug problems. They're extremely violent. They have no impulse control. Some of the men in their lives are actually in danger because of these women. These women aren't necessarily all the victims. The second that she did that, the entire feminist movement turned on her. They gave her death threats. They killed her dog, and she had to leave because they were going to bomb her. I mean, so,
I think one of my favorite quotes from Warren is that we have lots of women's centers in this country. We also have men's centers too. They're called prisons.
Right.
It's true.
And that's the heart. And when you talked about womenshealth.gov and things like that, I want to be very clear that you don't get welfare as a man. You don't get TANF. You don't get WIC. You don't get all these things as a man in this country whatsoever. I mean, it's wildly broken. And for Warren, if you've not seen or listened to the interview, if you go on Audible and listen to The Myth of Male Power, you can get it for free if you join. It will really begin this journey inside of you of asking, why aren't we equal? And when I started filming and going around in Europe as well, filming, we began to see this construct where, just like in Holland, all these tulips pop up everywhere, one by one. All these men are just slowly waking up, going, wait a second. We have to die for our country. We have to work more than women. And then all of a sudden, we don't get our kids, and we have to pay all our money we've ever earned before and then our future money. Why are we not equal? And also, if I don't register for the draft, I can't get a loan. I go to jail. I mean, there's a whole slew of things like that.
Well, and Warren does actually say that men have a role in allowing for this to happen.
Yeah. And he also says, he encourages people to stand up and say, look, just as women were called man haters in the 70s, men need to stand up and be brave enough not to be called woman haters and not to be worried about it, because you need to stand up for equality and what it means for your children in particular.
Right, and I think that when we talk about equality, though, I think we're talking about equity and we're talking about legal equality. And I know we kind of went a little bit over this. So,
I get it.
I mean, none of us here, just so we're on the same page, at least to my knowledge, none of us here are egalitarians. But I think all of us understand that we should all be equal in front of the law. You know, if a man gets charged with a crime and he goes to prison for 10 years and a woman gets charged with the same crime, she should go to prison for 10 years.
This is not equality of outcome either, right? This is equality of opportunity.
Right.
I mean, but what really gets me going when I began this journey was going, male disposability. Is my son disposable? No, my son is not disposable. I am not disposable. My father's not disposable. My grandfather is not disposable. And that's what got me going.
And I think that, and I was going to say this too. I mean, and obviously I'm going to use this as a transition to move on. But, you know, it's interesting you bring this up, this idea of male disposability and about how, you know, women are good and men are bad in general, you know, to use black and white terms, right? I think what's interesting is that, like, you know, when I was younger, you know, one of the things that people talked about is that, you know, the woman was supposed to be the prize, right? She was the quote unquote prize that you're supposed to win. And we see this throughout society. You know, these women are told, look, you are the prize. You are the person who is supposed to be, you know, who's supposed to be won. They have to earn your time and your energy and everything else. And that sets them up
for failure.
Absolutely. It hurts women.
Exactly. But the men bought into the lie too. They bought into the story.
Absolutely. And that's where I'm going with this. And too many men, myself included, hell, I made the mistake twice. So, you know, too many men buy into this and they say, you know, yeah, this is the construct that we do. And the sad part about it is that as men start waking up, the thing that they're not asking is this: when they're with a woman and they are interested in this woman romantically or to have a relationship or anything else, the question that none of these men is asking is this: what do you bring to the table? Other than sexual access, what is it that you contribute to my life? What is it that what are the assets that you bring other than your ass and your tits? And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is it because, you know, look, the sex can be fantastic, right? It could be absolutely mind-blowing fantastic. But okay, so you've done that for an hour or two a day, you know, during the honeymoon period or whatever. But even if you're still doing it an hour after the fact every day, you still have to deal with this woman for 23 hours more. So how are you going to fill those hours if she's not an asset outside the bedroom? How, you know, what is it that she brings to your life beyond the access to sexuality, especially if you're getting a little bit older and children are off the table? I think that those are questions that a lot of men need to ask, because we have this idea in the manosphere where it's like one of the things you said, you know, women are man haters, and a lot of women have said that they're not, but men need to say, look, we don't hate women. We hate the deal that's been given to us. We hate the fact that this ideology demonizes, you know, hashtag all men. And that's the problem, is that, you know, the majority of the men in the United States, you know, well, in the world, are not the abusers that they are portrayed to be. And this idea that they are is ridiculous. But I think that also brings me to another small tangent in this little train of thought that I'm driving down on. And that is, not all men are innocent. And people need to get that. And we see this, or at least I see this in the manosphere on the internet, that every man is, you know, he's pure as a driven snow, and every woman is horrible and this and that. But the reality is that the truth is somewhere in between. There are a fair amount.
There's a mixture, but the problem is that when the police come knocking on your door,
they arrest the man.
Goes away.
Right.
And that's despite the statistical data of who initiates.
Well, and that's
IPV in our personal
right, and
lives.
I guess and that's where I was headed, was that the difference is that even though there are men in the world who are horrible people, The horrible women in the world are absolutely enabled. They are lionized. They are put up on a pedestal, and they are told to other women, look, you see this piece of garbage here on this pedestal that we just gave the gold medal to? Be like this piece of garbage. You will be rewarded for it. And then all these other generations of women be after that piece of garbage. They're like, yeah, I want to be a piece of garbage. That sounds great. And then that's what they do.
But the real issue that we look at is that when we go into court systems or police systems, et cetera, justice systems, where we don't hold women to the same standard, what we're saying is that women are children, right? That's exactly what we're saying. And so if you march down this for 50 or 60 or 70 years, that's exactly what you're saying.
Well, yeah, you can't have it.
No one's confronted these judges. No one's confronted these legislators saying, well, do you believe women are equal? Well, yes, we do. Well, you clearly don't.
Right.
Because you're giving them everything.
Well,
and you're not holding them accountable for anything. When they lie, when they commit IPV, when they commit child abuse, hardly any of them are ever held accountable or thrown in jail.
Well,
literally, I think I was in Travis County, and I talked to the DA, and he goes, we're not throwing moms in jail. Well, whose job is it to throw people in jail?
Right.
I mean, if you had a 5-year-old,
I think that
and every time your 5-year-old misbehaved and you gave him candy and ice cream, what are you going to get 15 years later?
Well, and I think that's
individual.
Right. And I think that that's an indefensible hypocrisy of the feminist movement and the indoctrination we see not just in the legal system, but in academia. Because on one hand, they're saying, look, women can do everything they want. And then on the other hand, they're saying, no, we need to infantize them so that, we make them look like children because clearly they're not capable. Well, it's like, well, look, they're mutually exclusive. Pick one. So
yeah, I think it's very insulting. My daughter is just as important as my son, and giving her more rights than my son. Are you kidding me? And then for Warren's big issue is that he's very concerned about young men in our current age. It's nearly impossible to find a man, et cetera. I mean, when I first started this journey, doing third-party baby, which is a fertility journey, the people there are telling me how all these men in their 20s aren't dating or having sex anymore. And the ones that are really wealthy, having third-party babies to bypass the family court, don't even bother with women because they don't want to be driven before court systems.
Well, they've got these huge, issues. There's mental health issues. They're depressed. There's a lot of things going on in our society. But I want to be very clear about the dirty little lie that is, about females and males and who's domestically violent to who. So the CDC just came out on February 5th of this year saying that 31% females are more likely to commit domestic violence. We've got this horrible lie that men, all we have is a lot of antisocial men who are out there committing crimes against females. And the CDC themselves are putting out those images of women with a black eye and a scratch on a cheek.
So what you're saying is that you're more violent than the men around you. Got it.
Yes.
Apparently.
Well, no, it's interesting because there was exactly. Yeah. No, it's interesting because a couple of years ago there was a study that came out it was actually a feminist who said that when it came to one-sided DV, women were 70% more likely to commit DV than men were when it came to one-sided. But when it was bifurcated DV, in other words, when or bidirectional DV rather, that it was almost 50-50. But I guess my thing is that we need to be looking at the stats for what they are on the ground. And this goes all the way back to Duluth. I mean, this idea, and you touch on a great point, Thompson, because this idea that men are perpetrators and women are victims, that's a lie that's been perpetrated since Duluth came out. Even one of the founders, Ellen Pence, admitted this in a college textbook. I did a video about it last year. Actually, I think I did the video is from October 2017, so it's over a year old now. But yeah, I think that that's extremely important. So let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit. I know we kind of talked a little bit about Warren Farrell. We kind of delved into the weeds a little bit. I went to Tangentville. You went to Tangentville, Mike. Thompson, talk to me a little bit about what got you involved with Cash and Prizes, and kind of what you're hoping to achieve from it.
Okay. Well, number one, we need to educate people about just how bad the system is. And we've got a lot of professionals that can tell you, well, this is what we know now. What we're trying to do is be relevant about where our social crimes are occurring, why things have changed very much so over the last 50 to 60 years, how that came about, talk about the relationship between men and women, but more importantly, how we change things for our children and how we come up with better solutions for them. Because right now, our children are not thriving. They're not happy, obviously. We've talked about that already. And how we keep the balance between this gender wars and the finger pointing that's occurring. What I believe is really wrong about our system here is we really think that our shit doesn't stink, and it does. So let's come up with some solutions, and that's why I'm excited about our project with Cash and Prizes, because we're delivering information, we're showing excellent interviews, but we're also coming up with solutions to some of these problems. So that's why I'm involved.
And I think that's awesome because I tell you, I watch a lot of documentaries and, anybody can identify the problem, right? And so when you start thinking about what the solutions are, what the solutions might be, rather than just asking or answering, well, I should say just asking open-ended questions with no answers, trying to come up with potential solutions, I think is absolutely important.
It's really hard. It's like going to a firefighting convention and not talking about water.
Right. And that's, I guess, kind of the point that I'm trying to make. So, I'm excited to be part of the team. I know I've met with the team at least once, previously. We talked a little bit, previously about some of the stuff going on here and some of the stuff around it. Honestly, I'm really excited about what the next 12 months looks like, both with Cash and Prizes and kind of some of the other stuff we've talked about behind the scenes. And guys, just so you know, I do believe Cash and Prizes does have a GoFundMe currently. I don't know what else Mike has done with that. I will put links to Mike's YouTube channel. Check it out, definitely. And if you can put some money where your mouth is, and if you support Cash and Prizes and the message that they are trying to share with everybody and the education they're trying to provide, definitely contribute to the GoFundMe. Definitely keep an eye on this channel. Definitely keep an eye on Michael's channel so that you can get an idea when the movie comes closer to coming out. You can kind of keep track as to what's going on. So with that said, Michael, is there anything that you want to close with today?
I'm just saying that basically our team is roundtabling with you as well. And we're in the writing process right now. We're going to start filming as soon as about 2 or 3 weeks, as far as like filming the non-interview segments. As well, we're going to try to have most of this shot by July and hopefully show up at the International Men's Conference in Chicago and show probably a 95% rough of it as far as that goes. And we're going to turn it into a trilogy as well. So of where that goes. And then we're going to begin shooting the next section probably in October, November. And then the following one probably this time, the third one this time in 2020.
Can I also share some of the other projects we're working on, which I'm fairly sure that your audience would be interested in?
Sure.
We are turning up to the monthly child support commission meetings. We are making sure that we educate them about the Title IV monster, Title IV D&E.
Yeah.
Right.
We also are really interested in assisting vets moving forward. Some of the ideas we're working on is a bill to
right to parent, right to serve.
Right to serve, right to parent, and that type of thing. The other thing is alimony. We've been
we're kicking around alimony. Just so you know, I interviewed Steve Hittner. He's in Divorce Corp. We're trying to move on changing laws and being really active in that zone. We're currently looking for a funder for that. We're looking for a person who wants to spend $30,000 to end it. You can end it for about $30,000 in your state. Contact me if you're watching this going, oh yes.
Right.
So there's some things that your audience can get involved with. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it takes up time and energy. But we believe that these are really important social issues that
we're really connected. Like Jeff Morgan, I sent Jeff Morgan around to Texas to shoot. He's the one that went and got the AG to talk about Title 40 and how much Texas goes after. Like Texas gets $4 billion, which is an increase of $2.5 billion in the last 15 years.
Well, wasn't Jeff the one who filmed the ADA, who was talking about how to trash men that I used in my other video?
How they drove family attorneys.
Right, and this is in Austin, Texas. They drive them
outside of the attorney prosecuting's office to actually be more effective, take this to the family court. Then you don't clog up our system with
Right.
these domestic.
Yeah. So domestic violence. I mean, the issue is that what you need to be doing is saying, "Hey, we need to treat domestic violence as a serious crime because it's really serious, right? This is a criminal matter. It doesn't belong in family court." And what she's talking about is every lawyer has to do a continual legal education. And so this ADA, Assistant District Attorney, is talking all about exactly how you would do this. She actually committed 3 or 4 felonies in the process.
This is how you do the silver bullet.
Right.
This is step by step.
And this is not just in Texas. This is every state does this.
Well, and
every single state has these conferences to do exactly.
When I was when I was an MRA in Washington State, that same type of thing happened, which is why I felt it was important to make that video. And I do know that a lot of people who watched that video were very incensed by it. And many of them were talking about filing a bar complaint against that ADA.
I think they are, because what ends up happening is I'm getting all these contacts with Jeff as well about taking it down off of YouTube, all major protests, blah, 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 blah. And they are really super pissed that they got filmed telling the truth of what they're doing.
It's that, and the problem is that they do this so often. See, that when you told me he had permission to film that was amazing to me, because what that told me is
it's stupid.
You would never believe that this would happen
they
in our country.
Mike, you took the words out of my mouth, Mike. They normalized all this, and they said, "Oh my God, we can do whatever we want to. We're bulletproof." No, you're not. You
could say that this directly relates to why false accusations within a divorcing scenario are over 70%.
No, they're actually 80%. They're 80%.
They're huge. They're huge no matter what. Right.
I'm getting the weeds, but basically domestic violence accusations, child sexual abuse allegations.
Michael, you're mansplaining.
I'm mansplaining. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
But anyway, the great secret of all of this is that most of all of this, about 80%, all take place in custody. Right. And the other issue is that 8 out of 10 suicides are male, and almost all of those suicides that are male revolve around child custody.
Right. And let me talk about and let me tell you, while we're dipping in the weeds before we get out of here, let me say one other thing too. The Jussie Smollett issue with the false allegations that he made, trying to say that he was a victim of racial hatred. His case is the textbook example of why, when somebody accuses somebody else of a crime, we need to have professional law enforcement investigate it, not only to determine and to discover who committed the crime and to hold them accountable, but to determine whether or not a crime has been committed, and to determine whether or not somebody's making shit up in order to get some kind of benefit. And the problem that we have with that particular case is that he made it up. He not only made it up, but they didn't even have to investigate very far in order to find the truth of what's going on. And the cases that I've touched in family court, I use the same method. And what I mean by that is that, most family court attorneys, they don't do discovery. They don't send subpoenas. They don't do interrogatories. They don't do requests for admission of denials. They don't do their job. And so when these false allegations come up, they walk into court and they issue a blanket denial. They pull their pants around their ankles and they just take it in the ass for their client, destroying his life in the process. And of course, this happens to women as well. And so this idea that we are trying to prosecute crimes in civil court or in Title IX college court or in any other witch hunting tribunal is absolutely ridiculous to me. And so one of the reasons that, I'm pretty happy about being on the Cash and Prizes team is because we can talk about some of these things now. And the advantage of doing this as a trilogy rather than as a single movie is when you look at things like Divorce Corp, or you look at things like Cassie J's Red Pill, those are great beginning primers, but they don't go far enough. Because for anybody who knows this stuff already, anybody who's active in the manosphere, anybody who's active in the legal community, anybody who has any modicum of education, we already know all this stuff. So it's like, why would I watch this stuff? But, when you talk about part 2 or you talk about part 3 of the trilogy where things start happening and the deep dives start happening, now what you're doing is you provide your primer in the first piece, and then you do a progressively deeper dive in the trilogy. And the advantage of that is that now the people who walk away from watching the trilogy, they have a level of knowledge and education that they didn't have before that's more than just like the 101 level stuff. And I think that that's going to be extremely helpful down the road as we're educating the people who watch this, the children and, the families that see it, and they go, oh my God, I didn't realize how bad it was. Because again,
right.
The thing is,
the other issue, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is that I go to child support commissions and have these conversations with people, on boards and whatever, and coffee shop conversations, et cetera. And they are so steeped in their perspective, okay, they can't even see outside of it. And
right.
I have these conversations and they're radical concepts to them, but they're not. They're just basic concepts of equality.
And the best thing that has happened in these types of meetings is you've got a lot of attorneys. We had a judge after she spoke, stand up. She was
bouncing up and down, screaming.
She was saying, I've been doing this for 35 years.
Yeah, she's been fucking over kids for 35 years.
I wanted to stand up in her face and say, and herein lies the problem. Look where we're at,
Yeah. But
well, what we used to say, we used to get these attorneys that were like these seasoned attorneys. And you get these attorneys that are like, I've been practicing for 20 years or 25 years or whatever. And you just look at them and you go, and you've been under a goddamn rock the whole fucking time.
Yeah, all you've done is buy yourself a BMW and a mountain home or a ski home.
Well, and this judge is saying to us, well, we've got all these deadbeat dads, and we just presented that. Yes. We actually don't. Yeah. If a man is involved with a child from the beginning, they're likely to actually stick around and number two, pay their child support. And she's suggesting that, well, the reason we have this Title IV D&E monster is because we need to feed the little children.
Right.
And we're saying, yeah, but child poverty is skyrocketed.
Yeah. So here's the big takeaway.
Well, before we dip in the weeds on
one thing, and then we're gonna roll it. But what ends up happening is that the source of poverty is poverty is deepened from the 60s. It's gone from 26 to 32%. So when you split a family, then you instantly create poverty. Then you end up having the children, and the mother who all sit in poverty. Oh, we need to have TANF and welfare and all these Section 8 and have a whole slew of things. So we actually generate the exact poverty we're trying to cure, and then we bring all these more government programs, right? And child support sits right in the middle of that. And it's very interesting because it's actually constituting a quasi-fraud. But the point of the film, especially the first one, is to bring people in, to bring normies in, to bring legislators or people that sit on committees. Like I talked to a woman who worked at the AG's office in Texas, who's a lawyer, big, prominent. We're doing God's work. And I'm going, no, you're not. You're not doing God's work. You're actually part of the problem because you can't see beyond what you're doing. Anyway, that's the construct. Is that the purpose of the film is to educate normies and to see another perspective of why we have all these school shooters, why we have all these homeless, why we have all these drug problems. Think opioid crisis, think meth, think crack, think any of it. Why we have a 700% increase in the prison industrial complex. All of this stems from divorce culture. When you listen to Tupac's Changes, right? I got to do what I got to do to survive, right? We never had thug and thought culture until we had divorce culture.
That's right.
And that's exactly why it's from. That's exactly where it's from.
Right. Well, and I think, again, I think that underscores the need to make the message be in a trilogy rather than a single movie. Yeah. Because,
too big.
Yeah, it's too big. And even if you make it concise, that's what she said. But even if you make it concise, you have to, it's a deep dive. These are complex issues, and there's a lot of information to be shared. So
but the other issue that you get involved with these old judges, and you're making simple solutions to complex problems. Well, yes, they're complicated, but do you know how you solve it? It's really simple. You treat men and women identical in court of law. Problem solved. All these things start melting away. Right.
Well, and I will say this in closing. I think that when it comes to this situation, I'm far more hopeful than I was a year ago. People are waking up on their own. We're seeing people rise up all over the country in a way that I've not seen in 15 years. And, I think that there's a lot of opportunity here to educate people and to bring some sanity back to the conversation. So with that said, Michael and Thompson, is there anything that you'd like to leave us on today?
Go ahead. It's all you. Take it away.
No, you take it away.
I take it away. All right. Well, hopefully I'll see you maybe in Chicago at the International Men's Conference. And take a look at my channel. and really take a look at that. Take a look at all the Warren stuff. Really watch the Melissa Isaac one. It's really hard to get an attorney to come out and tell the truth about what's going on. It's very difficult. And if you have some extra cash, if it's $5 or $10, send a GoFundMe. Do it, because we need the cash. We need to make it happen. But this is going to get made. We are going to make this happen, and it's going to be epic.
Awesome. Thompson?
I would just say that, we've spoken about a lot of things here, but the bottom line for me and my motivation around all of this is, children are our hopes and dreams, and they're our future. And it sounds cliche, but we need to do our best for them. So that's why I'm excited by this project. And I know that we're all in this for that reason. And again, that's why I'm doing this.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for taking the time. I know we had a couple technical hiccups there and there. So, I appreciate you guys taking the time out today to make this happen. And everybody else, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll be putting the links to everything we've talked about in the description below. Check out Cash and Prizes and check out their GoFundMe. Check out some of the interviews. Check out the interview with Warren Farrell, as well as Melissa Isaac. And for those who don't know, I believe, if I remember correctly, Melissa Isaac is the attorney who represented Judge Roy Moore in the false allegations that he had leveled against him. And for those that have been following my channel, I've actually done multiple videos on the Judge Roy Moore false allegations and the Democratic setup around that.
Thompson's the one that got me that interview, because I talked to over 1,000 attorneys around the country. And we flew to D.C. and interviewed Thompson. It was amazing.
So Barbara Kay is one more that we didn't mention.
Yeah, she's great.
Okay. She's amazing.
She's a national post.
It's an hour and a half. It's amazing to listen to because it's a real big picture.
And I have another one from Tori Evans Barton, who runs the Fellows Foundation. Oh man, she's an African American woman. She's amazing.
It's exciting.
It's a really good interview. I'll post it.
As long as it's as long as it's sane, that's fine. But yeah, so check it out, everybody. Check out his channel. Check out all the interviews. There's a lot of really good interviews that are there. He spent a lot of time and effort. I've spent a lot of time and effort, not just with Michael, but with the team behind the scenes, talking about a lot of the stuff that they're doing. There's a lot of hard work that has gone into this. There's been hundreds of thousands of dollars that have gone into this. There's been many hundreds of hours spent. I would say thousands of hours collectively.
12-hour days for probably
exactly
2 or 3 years. I mean, so, and honestly, DDJ's been amazing. I'm really serious. Yeah. We discovered him by picking up the book, The Feminist Lie, and we were like, we're going to shoot this down. We don't believe it, and we went through the whole thing. And it was like, damn it, this is real. And it was very interesting. And through a series of conversations and meetings and what have you, we're like, dude, we got to get this guy on, man. This guy's amazing. So we really appreciate everything. It's very valuable. It's been super helpful for changing perspectives.
Well, and obviously, it's important to have a group of people to be able to bounce ideas off as well. And so for me, when we have these conversations, both, in public and in private, it's important for us to be able to test our theory in the marketplace of ideas because, any one of us can go off the reservation if all we do is live in an echo chamber. So
yeah, we live in a little basement.
Exactly. Covered in Cheeto dust.
Cheeto dust, playing Destiny all day long. Yeah.
Right. Wait, we're not supposed to do that? Damn it.
I wish. I mean, truthfully, I think I'd be a much happier person.
Probably until you couldn't get out of your basement when the ambulance showed up. So with that said, thank you guys and everybody else. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.